Have you ever felt a certain way inside? Different, not necessarily better or worse, but profoundly so, as if an invisible wall existed between you and the rest of the world, a heightened sensitivity, a constant ache, a never-ending quest, like your soul knows something your mind hasn't grasped yet. If that resonates, perhaps this video isn't a coincidence. Maybe, just maybe, you've been chosen, not in the mystical sense, often used to boost ego or create illusions of superiority, but in the most painful, most truthful, and most transformative way imaginable. A person carrying an unseen mark, a wound that, instead of breaking them, becomes a gateway to their greatest strength. Carl Jung, a titan of depth psychology, believed that what wounds us in childhood doesn't just shape our personalities. It defines the very blueprint of our souls. And he went even further. He suggested that some traumas aren't random accidents, but rather invitations, dark summons to inner journeys that few dare to undertake, wounds that, if left unacknowledged, drag you into cycles of self-sabotage, emotional dependencies, and destructive relationships. But if faced head-on, they can unlock a depth of meaning so profound that even suffering can't erase it. Today, on our channel, you'll discover 4 childhood traumas that, according to Jung, not only explain much of what you feel, but could also reveal that you harbor a distinct destiny. And don't worry, this video isn't about blaming your parents or pointlessly reliving old hurts. It's about awakening, about finally understanding why you feel what you feel, and why, against all odds, you're still here. Because perhaps what wounded you made you who you were meant to be. Trauma number 1, the unseen child. Not literally, because maybe your parents were physically present. Maybe you had food, a bed, school, and toys. But Jung argued that the worst form of neglect isn't physical absence, but a lack of soul. And there's a type of child who grows up with emptiness in their eyes because no one truly saw them. No one saw who they really were. Their fears were dismissed, their joys stifled, their tears brushed away with a quick, "Don't cry." This child learned early that being authentic meant being rejected, that showing their feelings was dangerous. So they created masks, became the good one, the diligent one, the funny one, the strong one. They adapted, growing up, molding their personality to fit the expectations of the world. But inside, something died. Jung called it the betrayal of essence, and this betrayal comes at a price. These individuals, often hiding in plain sight, spend their lives feeling like something is fundamentally wrong with them. Even when they achieve, they live with the fear of being exposed as frauds. So, they overwork. They love too hard. They try to fix others, as if it could somehow fill their own emptiness. And the saddest part? No one sees how utterly exhausted they are. But the truth is, the trauma of being unseen ignites the most intense search of all, the search for oneself. Trauma number 2, the conditionally loved child. You were praised only for good grades. You received affection only when you were good. You were valued only when you fit in. This child learned that love is something to be earned, that they must strive, conform, and remain silent to merit affection. And this lesson becomes so deeply etched into the subconscious that as an adult, they continue to repeat the same pattern. They attract relationships where they must constantly earn love. They feel guilty when resting. They feel ashamed when they make mistakes. And they experience a persistent sense of inadequacy, as if they'll never be good enough, as if something within them is inherently flawed. This isn't just insecurity. It's a soul wound. Jung said that conditional love breeds a false self, a social I that functions well, pleases others, and follows the rules, but is deeply disconnected from its true essence. The inner child of this person has learned that they can't be loved for who they are. So they spend their lives trying to be someone they're not. And the result? An emptiness as quiet as it is devastating. But this trauma, as painful as it is, holds a hidden meaning. The chance to discover that true love begins when you stop trying to earn it. When you dare to love yourself, even with your imperfections. Trauma number 3, the child blamed for feeling. This child cried, and they were called dramatic. They felt anger, and they were labeled disobedient. They felt fear, and they were called weak. Over time, they learned to suppress any emotion deemed negative. They grew up overly rational, controlled, always trying to keep everything in order, everything under control. But inside, they lived in a state of war. Jung taught that what we suppress doesn't disappear, it merely retreats into the subconscious. And there, it acts as a shadow. People with this trauma typically become high-functioning adults, but emotionally disconnected. They're the ones who help everyone but never ask for help themselves, who seem strong but are imploding inside, who have unexplained bouts of anxiety, secret addictions, hidden obsessions. They fear feeling because they were taught to believe that feeling is bad. But unexpressed feelings turn into pain, and pain that is not acknowledged turns into self-sabotage. Have you ever caught yourself ruining something good without knowing why? Have you ever felt guilty for being happy? Have you ever walked away from a relationship when it seemed promising? Maybe it's not because you don't deserve it. Maybe it's just the trauma speaking. Careful. Feeling hurts. But the good news is that this fear can be overcome. When you learn to feel without judgment, you begin to reclaim your lost humanity. Trauma number 4. The child who grew up too soon. This child cared for siblings, comforted their mother, calmed their father, did everything to keep the peace. This child had no childhood. They learned early to take responsibility for everything and everyone, and thus grew up with immense inner rigidity. They don't know how to rest, don't know how to ask for affection, don't know how to trust. These individuals become overburdened adults who believe the world will collapse if they don't control the situation. They're natural leaders, but deeply lonely. Jung said that such people develop a hyper-functional ego, behind which hides a wounded, abandoned, exhausted self. Do you recognize yourself? Perhaps you felt you had no choice, that you needed to be strong because no one else would be, that crying was a luxury, that resting was a weakness. But know this, every child who had to grow up too soon carries within them a silent cry for help, and that cry needs to be heard, because there is no true strength without vulnerability, and there is no healing without acceptance. These are 4 traumas that, according to Carl Jung, not only shape your personality, but also reveal the type of soul you possess. Perhaps it's a soul that has endured much, but it's also a soul that sees more, feels more, and lives more deeply. A soul chosen, not for suffering, but for awakening. Perhaps you've spent your life considering yourself weak for feeling so intensely, but maybe that's the clearest sign that you're alive. And if it's true that the most wounded are also the most capable of healing, then maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe you are the answer. In the next part, we'll explore why most people live in invisible cycles of self-sabotage, and how, without realizing it, we turn our traumas into routine. If this resonated deeply within you, take a deep breath, because what follows will make you see your life through a different lens. Have you noticed how sometimes we repeat the same choices, the same patterns, the same mistakes? As if we're trapped in an invisible cycle, some secret script written long before we realized who we were. You swear that next time it will be different, that now you've learned, that you'll protect yourself, that you'll love yourself. But suddenly, you're there again, accepting crumbs, ignoring your feelings, trying to be good enough for those who never learned to truly love. And the worst part is that you don't even know when it started. You just feel tired, tired of being strong, of understanding too much, of giving too much, of waiting too much, tired of yourself. It is here that the depth psychology of Carl Jung begins to illuminate a quiet but telling path. The unconscious doesn't forget. Everything that was suppressed, everything that was not accepted, everything that remained unfinished in childhood, continues to live on, demanding resolution. But how? Through patterns, through the relationships we choose, through the crises we face, through the emotional dependencies we cultivate. None of this happens by chance. Each repetition carries with it a request for healing, and you, perhaps without even suspecting it, are currently experiencing such a repetition. Imagine a woman named Elena. She is 58 years old. She is the mother of 2 children, divorced for more than 10 years. From a young age, she learned to take care of others. She grew up, hearing that she must be mature, strong, responsible. She never had the right to make a mistake. She could never cry. She could never break. Her childhood was an emotional minefield, where love was accompanied by demands, and silence was synonymous with security. Now that she is almost 60, she wonders why she can't allow herself to rest, Why does she feel guilty even when she is happy? Why is her heart heavy, even when everything seems okay? Elena doesn't realize it, but she lives in an emotional prison. And the key, as Jung said, is in the past, which she learned to signal. She has no visible bad habits. She doesn't drink, she doesn't smoke, she doesn't take medication, but she is addicted to control, to pleasing, to being busy. Her trauma doesn't manifest in explicit destruction, but in quiet detachment from herself. And this, perhaps, is happening to you too, not in the same form, but with the same cause. Now imagine Robert, 44 years old, entrepreneur, successful, respected. On the outside, everything seems in its place. But at night, when the lights go out and the cell phone finally falls silent, anxiety comes. It is an anxiety that has no name. It is an emptiness that even a bank account cannot fill. Robert grew up with a cold, absent, harsh father, so he learned that love is won by achievements. He became the best in the class, the first in the company, the most reliable of all. But along the way he lost something, his soul. Today he lives trying to prove something that should never have been required of him, and no matter how much he achieves, the feeling of inadequacy never goes away. The child who needed love for what he did is still there, waiting for approval. Robert doesn't need another award. He needs to reconnect with his story. How many such people do you know? Or better said, how many times have you been that person? There are subtle ways to escape the pain. Some of them even cause public admiration, reprocessing, perfectionism, boundless altruism, a constant need for control. But behind these seemingly noble virtues, the same impulse often hides, the fear of feeling. Because when you feel, you encounter that forgotten part of childhood that was never accepted, and Jung said, "What is not brought to consciousness returns as destiny." Perhaps that is why so many people live on autopilot, not knowing why they are sad, anxious, or irritated, and moreover, not knowing how to get out of this emotional labyrinth that adult life becomes. On the outside, everything seems fine, but inside everything hurts, and there is an even deeper kind of suffering, the kind you can't explain. You have a good home, a good job, a loving family, but despite this, there is an existential discomfort, a kind of unmotivated sadness, as if you are carrying something that doesn't belong to you, as if something inside you knows that there is a missing part, a forgotten part of who you are. This type of pain is usually associated with trauma in relationships, not a big tragic event, but with a series of small emotional negligences that accumulated throughout life, a hug that never happened, "I'm proud of you," which was never said, fears you learned to hide, pain that had to be swallowed, silence that became the rule. All this crystallizes in the soul as a way of life, and then you begin to believe that this burden is part of life. But it is not. You were born for something more than just survival. Perhaps you came to this place thinking that this video is about Jung, but in reality, it is about you, about the ghosts that haunt you, and the decisions that you make without realizing it, and the relationships that you attract, the boundaries that you do not set, about the fear that appears without warning, sadness that has no name, and maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop running, not in order to suffer again, not in order to blame yourself, but in order to understand. Because when you understand the source of your pain, it begins to lose its power over you. And that's the beginning of a new story. Perhaps you have believed all your life that feeling too strongly is a flaw, that sensitivity is weakness, that your intensity is a problem. But Jung thought differently. He believed that those who feel a lot also have a greater chance of awakening, understanding, changing, because only the one who descends into the depths of himself is capable of touching true freedom. And if you are listening to this now, it is because you have already begun this descent. You didn't get here by accident. There is no magic cure. Not a single video, book, or therapy will solve everything at once. But there is something that can become the beginning of your liberation. A daily habit of listening to yourself, returning inside yourself, giving voice to your soul before the world drowns out her cries. Carl Jung believed in this, and it was on the basis of these principles that the electronic book was born, Jung's LUD method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and clarity of mind. A simple, direct, and profound guide that will help you turn knowledge into practice day after day, consciously, easily, and truthfully. If you felt that this content spoke to you, Perhaps this electronic book will be your next step. It is available in the pinned comment to this video, not as a miraculous remedy, but as a bridge between what you already know and what you need to start living. Because what heals you is not how much you know, but how you practice, and how you choose every day, not to abandon yourself. But what if your pain is not a mistake, but a message? And what if the behavior that you hate the most in yourself is actually a hint about a part of your story that has not yet been heard? Have you ever wondered why it is so difficult to change? I'm not talking about big, wonderful transformations, but about the little things in everyday life. You say that you will stop blaming yourself, but here you are again before bed reliving everything. You promise that you will put yourself first, but when the time comes, you are already saying yes, although all your bodies are shouting no, as if there is a gap between what you want and what you do, and sometimes this gap seems too deep to jump over. But what if this isn't an obstacle? But what if it's a door? Carl Jung said that everything we reject in ourselves, everything we push into the basement of our consciousness, comes back to control us. He called it the shadow. And what is the shadow? It's everything we've learned to hide in order to be accepted. It is the anger that you never learned to express. It's the fear you mask under productivity. It is the need you hide behind compulsion and independence. It's the tears you hold back. This is the sharp response you keep to yourself. It is the loneliness that you mask with social networks, automatic laughter, or endless tasks. But all this remains there, and every time we ignore it, the shadow grows stronger. She starts choosing for us. She makes us attract people who are similar to our traumas. She puts us in situations where we experience the same pain over and over again. As if life is trying to tell us, you have to look at it. Think about the cycles you've been through more than once. Perhaps you always connect with emotional, unavailable people. Perhaps you enthusiastically start projects and drop them halfway. Perhaps you are experiencing the same existential crisis every birthday. Have you ever wondered why? Is it really just bad luck? Maybe it's just your character? Or maybe there is some pattern that your subconscious is trying to show you. Jung said, until you realize what is in your subconscious, it will control your life, and you will call it fate. Now look around. We live in a society that teaches us to run away from any discomfort, to run away from silence, to run away from ourselves. When you get nervous, what do? You open your mobile phone, scroll through the feed looking for distractions. When you feel sad, you try to think positively. When you feel anger, you suppress it. When you feel fear, you rationalize it. But what you feel is who you are. Or what are you hiding? Write in the comments with complete sincerity. What emotion do you most try to avoid? Write in one word. No need to explain. Just write. You may find that other people feel the same way. Perhaps this is already the beginning of a deeper connection, and now the question that may seem simple, but few can answer truthfully. What exactly are you trying to run away from? Not what you say you feel, but from what appears only when no one is looking. In that hour of the night when everything calms down, in that moment after a quarrel, in that loneliness that appears even in company. What is there? A child who learned not to bother, a teenager who was never listened to, an adult who is tired of being strong. Perhaps you don't have words for it yet, but your body feels, your skin feels, your sleep feels, your heart feels, and all this is trying to wake you up. One of Jung's most disturbing ideas is that healing does not occur by ascending to light, but by descending into darkness. Because it is there that everything you avoided out of fear of not coping is located. But here's the secret that no one tells you: you will cope. The problem is that you were not taught this. You were taught to be efficient, productive, useful, but you weren't taught to listen to yourself, to cry without fear, to accept your feelings without apologizing for them. How many adults live as if they are 8 years old, still waiting for the hugs that will never come? How many parents raising their children are actually trying to extract themselves from their own upbringing? How many mothers taking care of their children are actually asking them to take care of them? If any of these phrases touched you, write, I acknowledge, in the comments, in your thoughts, in your diary, but acknowledge it, because denial does not heal, but awareness transforms. And there is one more moment. Our culture idealizes happiness. She puts smiles on everything. She says that the secret of life is to vibrate at high frequencies, think positively, and not complain. But Jung didn't believe in it. He believed that the soul does not want to be happy. She wants to be whole. And to be whole means to accept that you have light, but you also have shadow, that you are strong, but sometimes you want to be hugged, that you love, but sometimes you also feel anger, that you know, but you are also afraid. To deny this means to divide yourself, and no one can live fragmented for long without paying a high price for it. Perhaps that is why, even when everything is going well, you feel that something is wrong. Have you ever experienced the feeling that no matter how hard you try, something inside you continues to bother you, as if life can offer you more, as if you have something else that you can give, and that you can be, but you just can't get to that place? And perhaps it is precisely because a part of you is still stuck in past experiences, still trying to understand what happened, still waiting for someone to listen, but that never happens. If this feeling is familiar to you, stop for a moment. Don't run away. Don't minimize. Just feel it. This may be the most important part of the video for you. Now take a deep breath and think about what still hurts you, but you never had the courage to say out loud. What is still quietly bleeding, but everyone thinks has already healed. You don't need to write details. But if you want, you can. If you want to say the pain that I carry in myself is the feeling of abandonment, or it's the fear of being rejected, or it's the feeling that I'm never good enough. Write. Not so that others can read it, but so that you can read it yourself, because expressing it in words is the first step to stop carrying it within yourself. And when you see that you are not alone, something inside you is rebuilt. The truth is that most people do not live. They just react. They react to what they felt in childhood. They react to what they didn't hear. They react to the fear of feeling again what hurt too much. But this can be changed. Not by force, not by pressure, but by presence, with the courage to look inside yourself, from willingness to get out of automatic mode, with kindness to yourself. Because in the end, it's not about getting rid of the pain. It's about not letting it dictate how you live. And you can start this right now. Imagine a man entering rehab for the 4th time. His name is Marcus. He is 39 years old. He is the father of a daughter who he hardly sees, a former engineer of a transnational company, now unemployed. On the outside, he looks like a loser. But if you listened carefully to his story, you would notice something else. Marcus never wanted to ruin his life. He just wanted to drown out the pain that no one saw. And what is most disturbing? He himself no longer knows where this pain comes from. What drives a smart, sensitive person with so many opportunities to immerse himself in repeating cycles of self-destruction? The answer is more puzzling than it seems. And perhaps he is talking more about our society than about the so-called addicts. Carl Jung said that symptoms are messengers, not enemies. They appear when the soul cries out for something that has been ignored for too long. But the way we treat symptoms today is almost like punishing those who have mustered the courage to cry out. According to a study by the U.S. National Institute on Drug Abuse, about 85% of people who have completed a rehabilitation program return to drug use within a year. You got it? 85%. This means that the vast majority do not find healing. They fall into a vicious circle. Have you ever wondered why? Did they all really not put in enough effort? Or does the system treat pain with even more pain? The truth is that our approach to treating human pain is based on the mistaken belief that enough pain is enough to heal deep emotional wounds. But try telling this to a person who at 12 years old learned to numb themselves with alcohol to endure the cries in the house. Try telling a woman who was emotionally abused as a child that it is enough to think positively. Try telling yourself when everything seems fine, but inside you feel like you're falling apart, and you don't know why. Such words do not heal. They only increase the gap, and this gap prevents us from seeing what is really happening. A study conducted by Harvard University over 75 years followed the lives of more than 700 men, assessing their careers, attitudes, physical and mental health. The result? The main variable that determined the quality of life of these people was not money, success, or status. It was the quality of emotional connections. People who had real, deep, and meaningful connections lived longer and better. But what happens when from an early age we learn not to trust feelings, not to express our emotions, to believe that being vulnerable means being weak? Something simple happens. The pain does not go away. It hides. And the deeper it hides, the stronger it becomes. Now stop and think. How many times have you heard such phrases? He had everything to be happy. She was so cheerful, no one even guessed. He seemed like a man content with life. How many times have you yourself smiled while inside you were falling apart. Appearance does not show the truth, and that is why addictions are so poorly understood. They are not a problem. They are a desperate attempt at a solution, and this attempt, when it is not heard, turns into condemnation. Gabor Mate, a doctor and researcher who has devoted decades to studying addiction, says that the right question never sounds like this. Why do you use the correct question? What happened to you? When we replace judgment with listening, something changes. Pain ceases to be a shortcoming and becomes a roadmap. And what is most scary? This map is inside each of us. Perhaps you have never considered yourself an addicted person, but how about this need to always control everything? And this addiction to being liked by everyone, even if it costs you peace, and this obsession with productivity, even when the body asks for rest, these are also forms of anesthesia. The difference is that they are socially acceptable, and therefore more dangerous. After all, no one will put you in the hospital for an addiction to recognition. But how many nights have you spent without sleep, trying to prove that you are good enough? How many decisions did you make not because you wanted to, but because you felt it was the only way not to be forgotten? How many times have you swallowed no, just to avoid being rejected? Write in the comments if you dare. What behavior do you repeat most often? Even knowing that it hurts you, no need to justify yourself. Just write. You may find that there are others with the same wounds, and the very fact that you expressed it in words is already beginning to tear down the veil of the unconscious. The rehabilitation industry earns billions of dollars a year, but most of it works on the wrong logic. They treat the substance as the pain. They offer abstinence, rules, discipline, but they don't offer meaning, and a soul without meaning will always seek relief. That is why Carl Jung became such an important figure in this dispute. In one famous case, a man named Roland H., who had already lost all hope, turned to Jung after many years of trying to quit drinking, and Jung told him something that no one expected to hear from a famous psychiatrist. There is no medical solution for you. The only way out I have seen in cases like yours is a profound spiritual experience. And it was this phrase that gave rise to one of the most famous recovery movements in the world, anonymous alcoholic. Because for Jung, true healing comes not from the outside, but from the inside. It happens when something bigger than addiction fills the emptiness. Have you ever wondered what emptiness you are trying to fill? Perhaps not with drugs, perhaps not with alcohol, but with promises, distractions, activities. But what if this emptiness is existential? And what if it's a lack of meaning, a lack of real connection? Loneliness masquerading as independence. How many people do you know who are constantly joking, but are desperate inside? How many people say, "I'm totally coping and on the verge of a breakdown"? The question is, what are they trying to hide? And the bravest question of all, what are you trying to hide? Jung believed that the only way to become whole is to face what has fragmented us. But this requires a choice, and this choice no one can make for you. You can continue to numb yourself, continue to blame others' past system. You can continue to hope that one day, as if by magic, everything will be resolved. Or you can start the path back to yourself. And this path, contrary to what they say, does not begin with light. It starts with a wall, with the courage to go where it hurts, with the willingness to feel what you have avoided all your life, with the shadow, necessary to hear your own truth. Most people sleep with their eyes open. They live connected to everything except themselves, and therefore they repeat the same patterns. They connect with those who hurt them. They give up themselves in order to be accepted. They confuse attention with love, control with safety, results with value. But none of this brings satisfaction. It only fuels the cycle. And this cycle can only be broken when you stop running and start looking. The greatest addiction of man is not some substance. It's the addiction to running away from yourself. But the truth, the deepest truth, is that you are not broken. You are disconnected. Disconnected from your history, from your essence, from that part of yourself that was left behind, and who is now calling you back. This part does not want to be corrected. She wants to be accepted. And the time for this is now. How many times have you asked yourself, why even after understanding everything rationally, do you continue to repeat the same patterns? You already know that the problem is not only with others. You have already realized the source of many of your sufferings. You have already identified traumas, realized emotional addictions, admitted that your shadow has more power over your life than you would like to admit. And yet, you are still stuck in the same spiral. You still return to relationships that devastate you. You continue to silence your voice in order to keep the peace. You continue to postpone what is most important. You continue to seek in external things the meaning that can only be built from within. It's not a weakness. This is the ultimate symptom of disconnection. Carl Jung knew about this. He did not consider man as an imperfect being, but as someone who had lost his way home and turned flight into a way of life. The good news is that the exit has always been inside. There comes a moment in life when you realize that it is not trauma that defines you, but how you react to it. That neither wounds define your destiny about the courage with which you accept them. This is a big turn. When you realize that the past does not change, but its influence does. Yes, perhaps you will never get the apology you deserve. Perhaps you will never have the conversation you dream of with your parents. Perhaps you will never understand why that person left. But you can learn to free yourself from all this burden, not by erasing it, but by rethinking it. Jung said, "Freedom is not something that is given. It is what is conquered within the soul. And this conquest begins when you decide to stop living as a victim of your suffering and start going through life as their guardian." Have you noticed how we get used to chaos? There are people who, when everything is going well, become suspicious. They miss the frame, pain, instability, because in the depths of the soul, stability seems threatening. The world is weird. It's not madness, it's familiarity. If you have spent your whole life on the battlefield, the silence of peace may seem frightening. But that's the challenge. Learn to deserve good. How many times have you sabotaged something good just because you didn't know how to accept it? How many times have you approached those who reminded you of childhood rejection instead of turning to those who offered you shelter? How many times have you convinced yourself that it is love, when in reality it was just repetition? Repetition is not fate. This is an unconscious request for a solution. But to answer this request, you need to stop hiding behind your story. Let's talk honestly. You will not be able to free yourself until you wait for the world to save you, that someone will come and tell you that you are worthy of it, that life will finally become fair, that the past will change. This will not happen. What can happen and will happen if you allow it? It's that you will change. Every deep wound can become a bridge between who you were and who you are ready to become, but only if you stop running away. Here's the truth that's hard to hear, but it's necessary. Pain will not disappear just because you understood it. It will only change when you change. You must act differently, even when you still feel pain. You must choose not to repeat, even when your body asks for repetition. You must say no, even if you are afraid inside. You must say yes to yourself, even if the whole world has taught you to be silent. Healing does not happen in grandiose moments. It happens in the little things. On the day when you get out of bed, even if you don't have motivation. In that conversation, when you talk about your feelings for the first time. In that moment when you hug yourself, they criticize. These are real victories, and this is how you restore your path. You may be wondering, but what now? What do I do with all these feelings, with all that I have discovered? Do you feel that something has changed inside you? But what to do with this new clarity? This is where everything starts to fall into place. You will need a map, a step-by-step instruction, something that will embody this awakening in life, in choices, in action. This is exactly what we will provide you with next. A clear, accessible and real structure that will help you apply this knowledge in real life. Something that you can use every day, even in the most difficult moments. Because true knowledge is only valuable when it turns into action, and your soul is already asking for it. The hardest thing, to see what causes pain, you have already done. Now is the time for transformation, and all you need is to be ready to take the first step. There comes a moment in life when understanding alone is not enough. You can watch all the videos, read all the books, conduct all possible analyses. But if you don't embody this in everyday practice, you will continue to live with the feeling that you are always on the verge of change, and you never get into them. Many people confuse clarity with transformation. They understand traumas, recognize patterns, and even get excited about discoveries. But after a few days, they return to their old habits. Why? Because it's not enough just to know. You need to live what you know. Carl Jung said that enlightenment does not come from imagining images of light, but from realizing darkness. It transforms only when you go through it with presence, with choice, with gesture. This is what we offer now. to get out of the realm of contemplation and move to action. Not automatic, aimless action, but conscious action, connected with the soul, to what is born from within, and has the power to change the course of your history. If you have reached this place, it means you are ready. Close your eyes for a moment, take a deep breath, and let the following words find a quiet place inside you. What you are about to read is not a speech. This is an invitation, and perhaps the most important in your life. Strategic plan of deep connection. 3 stages to turn what you know into who you are. Name the pain. Listen to what has been silenced. There is no healing without listening. The first step is to honestly identify what is still causing you pain. Not in theory, not as a remote concept, but as something alive. Take a notebook, a sheet of paper, a notebook. Write without censorship 3 situations from your life that continue to haunt you. These can be major events or seemingly trifles that you have never forgotten. Then next to each of them answer, what did this situation teach me about myself? What did I stop feeling at that moment to survive? What in me is still reacting as if it is happening now? The truth is that most of your reactions today have nothing to do with the present, but are related to parts of the past that have never been properly felt. You need to name what hurt you, because what is not named continues to control you in the dark. Do this with love, with pause, with respect for your story. This is the fertile soil on which transformation begins. 2. Rewrite the patterns. The choice to act, even if you are afraid. You already know what hurts you. Now is the time to choose another. For this, you will create a ritual. For 7 days, choose a pattern that you want to interrupt. Every time it appears, stop for 10 seconds before reacting. If your pattern is to say yes when you want to say no, stop, breathe in and say, I can choose differently. If your pattern is to run away from emotions, stop, feel the discomfort, and say, I can stay with this without running away. If your pattern is to constantly criticize yourself, stop, look at yourself with compassion and say, I see myself. This 10-second pause is revolutionary. It is what separates your past from your future. It is in this space that your true power of choice is born. You don't have to change everything at once. You only need to create cracks in the old system. It is through these cracks that light penetrates. Track, cultivate an inner refuge, creating a sacred space in yourself. Life will continue to test you. There will be difficult days, breakdowns, silences. That's why you need a refuge. Choose a time during the day. Any. 5 minutes. Only 5. At this time you will do only one thing. Be with yourself. It could be meditation. It could be writing. It could be just closing your eyes and breathing. The symbolic gesture is important. I take care of myself. If you do this every day, you will put down roots. And deep roots will withstand any storm. This is a sacred place. There you will return when everything seems confusing. Here you will connect with your feelings, with who you are, with who you have chosen to be. Imperfection transforms. And constancy, real presence,